we got to have an honest conversation about where we sit offensively. Coming out of the Ole Miss game, I think that's all the talk, what everybody wants to talk about. Where do you sit now coming out of the game versus Ole Miss in the loss? I know a lot of people want to make some things, and even myself, in some instances, do I think the defense played great? No. Did I think they played good enough in 90-plus total plays, even with penalties included? You give up 24 points when you play 95 or 96 or around plays, even with the penalties. I think you played good enough. You scored 24 points. You're on the field for 90-plus plays. You probably should win that game. You hold that team to 24 points based off of how bad you were offensively, you might should have won. Tonight, we're not talking a lot about the defense. Do I think that Blake Baker regrets not sending and spying Trinidad Chambliss a little bit more? Probably. But I'm not putting any of this on the defense. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's always crazy when the defense doesn't do what we expect them or we lose. It's always on Harold Perkins. And don't think that I'm not seeing your tweets or seeing what some of the narrative gets pushed. He shouldn't be in coverage. Guys, Harold Perkins didn't lose you the game. When he got hurt last year, this defense is better without him. No, you weren't. You faced off against a really good team, and you held them to 24 points when your offense barely at times could get past the 50-yard line. No, I think they held strong. But we have to have an honest conversation with ourselves. Number one, let me tell you something that I've kind of grown a little bit weary of and something that I'm kind of done talking about. I'm a little tired of talking about how bad your offensive line is, and let me explain. Are they bad? Yeah, they're bad. Can they help you run the football? No. But something has got to give because this is going on the second year where you can't run the ball. And I know that you're not going to go anywhere fast if you cannot line up and just simply run the football. I understand that. But how many times are we going to use that as an excuse? Because now as an offensive coordinator under Joe Sloan, you've had 17 games to figure it out. Now, Brian Kelly today on Feinbaum said, well, we got to be better running against three-man fronts. No shit, you got to be better against running against three-man fronts. But you can't run the ball, nor can you scheme up anything to help you run the ball. And this has been a constant issue. So we can talk about Blake, the offensive line's bad. This is bad. That's bad. You're right. You're not wrong. And when we talk about Garrett, it is something that needs to be discussed. The offensive line is not good. You can't run the football. I get it. How many times are we going to have to talk about that before you start doing things to replicate it? And I do think, for what it's worth, there were some play calls in the game on Saturday against Ole Miss that you tried to, and your quarterback refuses to throw the football to the open guy. I posted the interception. And in the interception that Garrett threw, guys, he's got Bauer Sharp wide open on first down. You could have had a chance where I'm not even assuming that you're going to score a touchdown on that drive, but I'm just going to assume that you kick a field goal if you hit Bauer Sharp and you get close to the 30 to 25-yard line and you line up and kick a field goal and you go up 7. The decision-making is something that needs to be discussed because all of last year, I got ridiculed by saying, guys, is the offensive line bad? Yes, it's been bad. It's not going to get better. Well, you got to do things to remedy that. Now, today I tweeted this out, and I think the way that I tweeted it out, which is my fault, kind of got misunderstood. So let me explain. There have been teams that have had offensive line issues running the football with a quarterback that's been injured. It literally happened a year ago. Last year, the University of Texas had a starting quarterback in Quinn Ewers who had an oblique injury, had a torso injury, and required surgery, and he sat out a couple of weeks. In the games that Texas played last year against very tough opponents, and I don't know if you want to consider Ole Miss a very tough opponent, but against very tough opponents, guys, in 3 games, they had a total of 118 rushing yards. And in 2 of those games, they brought Georgia into overtime in the SEC championship game, and they were on the 1-yard line in the semifinal of the playoff with a chance to tie the game against Ohio State. So what did they do? Well, Blake, Joe Sloan is no Steve Sarkisian. You're right, he's not, but he found a way to get around it. See, what you don't do is what you really kind of mind-boggling to me at this point. You know that you can't run the ball. You know that you have an issue along your offensive line. You got to stop making it an excuse and saying, listen, we already know this, and start doing other things besides ramming your head against the wall and doing the same shit that you did all 5 weeks. Now, against Southeastern, you were a little bit different. Against Louisiana Tech, you did some things a little bit different. But against the 3 Power 5 opponents or Power 4 opponents that you played, you did the same thing over and over and over again, expecting for things to change. See, you can blame the offensive line, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm not saying that this offensive line is good and that they don't deserve any blame whatsoever, because they do. Brad Davis deserves some blame. The physicality and the overall culture and makeup deserves blame. Because we got to talk about this decision-making. Because how many games are you going to get to before you realize it's your biggest weakness? And what do you do to cover up your biggest weakness? You mask it. Guys, decision-making from the quarterback position over the last 2 years, quite frankly, has been god-awful. Now, last year, you can say, well, Blake, the offensive line was bad. Well, DJ Chester's not in there, and 4 of those guys got drafted. So what is it now? Now, the thing that we have to have a discussion about, and what I personally saw in recapping the Ole Miss game was, I think from the quarterback position, from the things that I personally saw, the decision-making was god-awful. Whether it's the interception, whether it's throwing into triple coverage multiple times, whether it's throwing into double coverage on 3rd down to Aaron Anderson, or throwing to Aaron Anderson and throwing him a hospital ball over the middle and him getting hurt, which we don't know the status of him right now. Gus, I know Aaron Torres tweeted this out, so I'm just going to quote him and use this, even though it's worse than this. In 10 SEC games, Garrett Nussmeier has 15 turnovers. 15. And that is not going to win you games either. So when you have a bad offensive line, you can't run the football, you also can't have a quarterback that's making horrible decisions, which he is. He is, and he has been. Now, I'm going to say this because it's about time it just came to a head. I don't think that there's anybody on this media beat from last year to right now and today that's taken more heat than I have about saying what I said last year about the interceptions and turnovers and what we need to talk about now. Guys, throwing into triple coverage, torso injury or not, oblique injury or not, does not defend throwing into triple coverage and not hitting a drag route that's open. It doesn't excuse the interception that was thrown against Florida when you're only up 10. It doesn't excuse it. What it does excuse is the fade route throw to Louisiana Tech that was short and got picked off, because that is an injury decision. You had Barrion Brown. It was a good decision. But because of an injury, you couldn't throw the football and get it to him, and it got picked. I can live with that. I think you as an LSU fan should live with that. Because when I rewatch the game and I post these clips on social media, I'm not doing it for my own benefit. I'm doing it to show that decision-making has been god-awful. Now, Garrett is 6-4 versus SEC opponents. 6-4. And in those 6-4 games, he's thrown 15 picks, which we discussed. He's had 20 touchdowns and 15 picks. The 20 touchdown mark is absolutely impressive. It's 2 touchdowns per game. The 15 interceptions is getting you beat. The decision-making is getting you beat. You got to come to an understanding that a couple of things. You can't have both of being a bad offensive line and having a bad run game and then your quarterback make bad decisions and be immobile. It cannot happen. Because, guys, you will be looking down and staring down the barrel of an 8-4 gun yet again if it doesn't get fixed. Something has got to be fixed. Now, before we move any further, I wanted to say this. Don't say that you weren't warned, by the way, because you were. You were warned literally on Thursday that it was not a matter of if you were going to get beat. It was only a matter of when. Because when you have those bad decisions and you can't run the football, well, only one thing's going to happen, guys. You're going to lose a game that you probably shouldn't have. And then when I come in here on Thursday and I say this, the reason this makes me nervous is because I always am of the belief that if you struggle in the run game, it's not a matter of if you get beat. It's only a matter of when you're going to get beat. You're 111th in the country in rushing. It was only a matter of time. But when you can't run the football and you keep missing, guys, it's not going to get masked. Now, we've taken a lot of shots, or I've taken a lot of shots at the offensive line. By the way, that clip was from Thursday. And Blake, why are you so nervous? We're going to blow them out by 21 points. No, you should have listened. But the offensive game plan has been god-awful the last 2 years too. And it's about time that we stop masking that too. If anybody that's an LSU fan or a national media member or a member in general of the media that's around LSU tells you that they have any idea what the identity of this offense is, they're lying. And you know how I know? Because LSU doesn't know their identity. They have no clue of what they want to be. They know that they have to try to be balanced and run the football. They don't know when. I don't think that the decision-making is only in the passing game either. When you're a quarterback and you see a three-man front and it's 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, whatever it may be, you got to check into a run and run the football and get yardage. You know, I think of Joe Burrow's first ever overall start against Miami. And the long Nicholas Brissett run was him checking out of a pass to get into a run play because they had a three-man down front. I know that the quarterback position is there's a lot to take hold. But I don't know if overall of checking out of plays and not knowing what defenses are in is not your biggest issue. I think a lot of times on the offensive line, I think a lot of times at receiver, I think a lot of times at running back, and I think all the time, mainly at quarterback, you're guessing about what's going to happen instead of flat out reacting. But I don't think Joe Sloan at the current moment has shown that there is an offensive identity to this team. Now, I will defend Sloan in this regard. Guys, you can't keep missing all of this stuff underneath and stuff be wide open and say that, well, that's a bad play call. Because, guys, there are situations like we posted where Bauer Sharp, Aaron Anderson, Kyle Parker, Xavion Thomas are wide open underneath, and either you're hitting them late and you're hitting behind them, or for the first time in the game, the throw, they actually do cover the stuff underneath, and you throw it anyway, and they tackle you before the line to gain. You're guessing. But overall, as an offense, you're not doing good enough from a play calling perspective. You've had 17 games where you can't run the football, and 4 guys got drafted. You got better at right tackle with Weston Davis out and Carius Kern in, and that is a plus, and you still couldn't run the ball, nor did you continue to attempt it. The biggest thing that I would say about play calling this week that pisses me off is that you did not stay with the run against the worst rushing defense in the SEC. You let one bad run affect what you were doing and try to throw the ball all over the place with an injured quarterback, allegedly an injured quarterback. That's what makes me the most upset. It's not the fact that you couldn't run the football. It's that you didn't continue to try to go to it when you were having blatant amounts of success. Like when Harlan Berry runs the ball for 9 yards, keep running it. And let me throw this in there too. 2 weeks ago versus Florida, you had 2 runs of 9 yards from Jawan Johnson on a shotgun toss. You haven't run it since. You know, there was a quote-unquote sourcing that came out 2 weeks ago that said LSU is going to be running more out of the I formation. Guys, since the last play against Florida, you hadn't run it. And Brian Kelly's long rant, it was, we can run the football. Look at the last play of the game. No, you can't. You can't. Because you're getting bad decisions from your OC. You're getting bad decisions from your quarterback. And quite honestly, I don't know if your offensive line knows what they're doing because they keep whiffing. It looks like they're confused. In the offseason, there was a thought that I had. When Brian Kelly got involved in play calling last year versus Florida, and things got better offensively. During the offseason, I said, I just don't see a way, and we can pull this up for you if you'd like. I did not think that there was a way that Brian Kelly could walk back not being involved in play calling. How could that remotely happen? How can that remotely happen? Because you confirmed to the world when you took out a play sheet versus Florida that you needed to get involved regardless of what is actually happening. You told every LSU fan that you felt as a head coach that you needed to be involved. That's the perception that you gave off, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, and you walked it back. Now you're struggling more than ever. You're struggling more than ever. Now, even though I don't think that Brian Kelly should have walked it back, and quite frankly, as crazy as this sounds, I want him meddling more in the offense. And it's been past time that I've called for him to meddle in the offense. When Mike Denbrock's here, fine, don't meddle. Because he knows what he's doing. But last year, you felt like you had to get involved. Now, why aren't you? Brian Kelly said today on Feinbaum that he's angry with himself, and he should be angry with himself. Because you can't keep ramming your head up against the wall thinking that play calling and decision-making from the quarterback decision or from the position or the offensive line will get better. Masking does not cover sins. Winning always has covered up a multitude of sins. It used to be the mantra of this show. Winning will cure all. But when you lose, it comes all out. I don't think Brian Kelly ever should have gotten rid of being involved from a play calling standpoint, nor do I think he needs to do it now. If you're asking me, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, I don't know if you make a change in season. I do not, and I've been very vocal about this, I don't like calling for people's jobs unless it gets egregiously very, very, very bad. To my own detriment, I may be the last person on the beat that will call for somebody's job. I don't like it. Guys, people have families, they have wives, they have jobs. I don't like it. It's not their fault that you hired them to do a position that maybe they're not qualified for. It's your fault. However, let's get down to brass tacks and what you're probably here for tonight. Is it time to go to Miachel Van Buren? If Garrett Nussmeier is truly hurt and he has an oblique injury, whether Brian Kelly says he does or he doesn't, whether he does from going out to media availabilities, does Garrett say, I'm not talking about injuries, and gives off the vibe that he is injured, and then you see some of the bad throws, you see some of the bad things that are happening, the fluttering passes to Xavier Thomas, can't throw the ball 35 yards downfield to Chris Hilton on a fade that maybe will won you the game. I think it's pretty obvious that something's off. whether you didn't prepare the way you needed to prepare in the offseason, or you do have an oblique injury. Regardless, is Garrett Nussmeier hindering you offensively? Because, guys, you can't find a run game, and he's immobile. And I don't like players getting benched or not playing because of an injury. I don't like it. But you get to a situation where, what do you have to lose? You're 119th in the country in run offense. You're 44th in passing offense, which is a miracle that you're that as bad as you've been. You're 59th on third down. You're 77th in the red zone. And you're the 88th total offense in the country. You can't run the ball. You can't score points. And you're one of the worst total offenses in the country. And, guys, if you take out the Southeastern game, you're in the 120s in a lot of these categories. You're almost dead last, if not dead last, in the SEC. What do you have to lose? Now, we're going to talk about later what I think LSU is going to do. But let's talk about Miachel Van Buren for just a second. Gus, Miachel Van Buren last year at Mississippi State, because of a Blake Shapen injury, had to come in for Mississippi State and did some really good things. Did some bad things as well. Had a lot of turnovers as a true freshman. But against teams like Texas, against teams like Georgia, he went toe-to-toe with them. And quite frankly, in some of those games, kept them in the game with some of the big throws that he made. Now, I have been out there, and I saw him during camp, and I thought some things were literally sluggish. And I thought some things didn't look great. But at this point, you got to ask yourself the question, if Garrett Nussmeier is injured, do you move on to Miachel Van Buren? And if Nuss wants to play, I understand that. But is he hurting your team? I think that not being able to throw the ball 35 yards down the field when a receiver has multiple steps on a DB and you're putting everything that you got into it and pushing the ball down the field and you can't do it, guys, that can't happen. Because against teams like Ole Miss, in 2 weeks against a team in South Carolina, against Texas A&M, who, guys, I know that they only scored 16 points versus Auburn, but who also went up to Notre Dame and splattered that ass. You got to give Miachel Van Buren a look. Now, I do not think that they are going to do that. My gut tells me right now, the Monday in 2 weeks before you play against South Carolina, I don't think that they do that. I think that they rest Garrett, and then they let him rest during the week. You come back on Monday, see if he's ready to go, and if the time off was able to help him recoup and recover here. Because you're going to continue to have a bad offensive line. You're going to continue to not have a run game. And when you have a quarterback that is very immobile and is injured and can't push the ball down the field, you're not going to win against these teams in the SEC. And you need to find something that can spark you. Now, when Garrett Nussmeier is fully healthy, and if he's fully healthy, if he's truly healthy, not, hey, I feel good, but if he's truly healthy, then run out there with it and see what he can do. But I question that. Here's the reason why I question it. Brian Kelly was on with Paul Feinbaum today, and he said, if there were some details that I had before the game, maybe we would have done some things differently. And I'm paraphrasing what he said. But Jacques Doucette of WAFB put the exact quote. And I'm going to read the exact quote to you, so at least I guess I should have just done that anyway. But let's read the exact quote that Brian Kelly said today on Feinbaum. He said, I think everybody's angry. I'm angry at myself for not having the details in this game that we needed. What are those details? Are those details that Garrett Nussmeier was actually more injured going into that game than maybe that was led on to Brian Kelly? I don't know that. I don't know that to be the case. But what are those details? Because based off of the throws that I saw, the details were, and based off of your comment was, would you have played Miachel Van Buren over Garrett Nussmeier if you knew what you knew? if you decide to go to Miachel Van Buren, which at the current moment, the way how things are going, I don't know if it's not a bad idea to give him a look. But I also come to a situation where, to all LSU fans, guys, you got to be patient with him. If Garrett Nussmeier is out in 2 weeks, if he's out for a month, who knows? You're going to have to be patient with a young quarterback. And he's still learning on the job in a new offense. And guys, in a new offense from a coordinator that a lot of you think that shouldn't be here. But the ultimate question is, does Miachel Van Buren give you the best chance to win? I think the things that Miachel Van Buren will instantly do for your offense right now with what appears to be an injured Garrett Nussmeier. We saw Miachel Van Buren push the ball down the field, literally against Southeastern, and every game that he played for Mississippi State a season ago. He is by far and clearly more mobile than Garrett Nussmeier, and either, for what it's worth, he will run and isn't going to tiptoe and make the bad decision if given the green grass opportunity to run. Guys, in this league, if you are immobile, you will not have success. Ask Connor Weidman at Texas A&M last year when you got him benched. And they went to Marcel Reed. How did that play out? Well, one kid transferred and the other's a starter at Texas A&M right now. You cannot sit in the – things are going to break down. And there is not going to be lanes and throwing lanes when they can drop 8. I would have more faith that Van Buren would see that and say, hey, I got 7 yards of green grass. I'm going to go and take it, and pray to God that he does. And maybe in a situation where Garrett's dressed, and if you absolutely needed him to go, maybe you could, but you're going to have to give MVB a shot, in my humble opinion. And I hate it for Garrett. And let me say this, because I know there's going to be a lot of pissed off people for me saying this. I'm not asking, if Garrett were fully healthy, I'm not asking for this. But he can't throw the ball, guys, downfield. And he's trying to overcompensate. There's no way as an LSU fan that you have seen the last 4 weeks and can say to yourself that he is right. You can't. Brian Kelly confirmed an injury. You have wobbly passes. You can't get the ball downfield. Well, what are we supposed to expect? Now, I don't think that you have the personnel on offense, especially up front. And if you're going to give up a pass rush, if you're not going to be able to run the football, you're going to have to find ways. You're going to have to find ways to generate things in the run game. You must. And if you don't want to run, Garrett, if you don't want to run the football with a quarterback, you're just simply not going to do it. You're not going to have success. What I think is going to happen here is simple. I think that they are going to rest Garrett Nussmeier throughout the week. And I think when it comes to next Monday, a week from today, they're going to see how he feels. That's what I think. Guys, I'm 1,000% speculating on that. Completely speculating. And I think they'll go from there. But if Garrett Nussmeier goes into the South Carolina game and you have a lot of the same situations that you had this past weekend versus Ole Miss, then guys, quite honestly, you gotta see if Miachel Van Buren can give you something a little bit different. And to be frank with you, if you let him go out there for one series and then you take him out because he doesn't get a first down, that's a detriment to you in your own right. But I do ask the question, has Miachel Van Buren been that bad at practice and things that we haven't seen that limits you to wanting to play a hurt Garrett Nussmeier over him? If you're asking me, I think this situation where Garrett's got a lot more dirty details than what's being led on than maybe a hurt torso or hurt or oblique. Guys, it's not rocket science. You have 15 interceptions in 10 games, and the offensive line has constantly been blamed, and to some extent they need to. But I will wrap it kind of up and starting with this. Having pressure, getting sacked does not excuse, not being able to run the ball does not excuse turnovers. Because I know a lot of you LSU fans that clown Quinn Ewers constantly. And I see on Twitter that you were doing it last year. Constantly you were clowning him. Why? Why? Decision-making has not been good, and it's about time that we start wrapping our minds around that. I personally am going to take a lot of shit for coming out here tonight and saying what I've said. A lot of shit. But it is the truth. It is the truth. You can't fold up in your sleeping bag and curl up in a little ball and think, oh my God, we can't run the ball. We can't pass protect. So I guess we just are gonna just continue to try what we're doing. Fuck that. You can't do that. If you cannot find ways to counteract the run game, if you can't find a way to get through to kids and be in situations where they are making better decisions, that is on you as a coach. It's on you as a coach. But guys, I end it with this. Well, a couple of things, I guess. I end it with this. I know I'm going to get completely and utterly destroyed by this take. But I ask you a question. In the 5 years that we've had Garrett as our starting quarterback, because he's got 22 interceptions. 22. In the last 18 games, he's got 15 total interceptions and 22 total turnovers, with fumbles included. That cannot happen. It cannot happen. And the injury, for me, is why I'm saying you got to give Van Buren a look. But even if you give Van Buren a look, the decision-making has got to be cleaned up. You can't keep throwing into triple coverage. You can't keep throwing balls into double coverage. You can't stop getting out of run plays on three-man fronts to throw the football. Now, if you want to get out of a run and you got one-on-one with Chris Hilton, you better be damn sure that you can get the football more than 35 yards. I don't mind that decision. What I mind is that you can't get it there. So, you can't throw everything away because you don't have a run game. You have got to start from scratch. You got to say to everybody that's on that offensive side of the football, listen, every position's up for grabs. Every single one. And until things get better, and until you find something from a play calling, decision-making, run blocking, running the football from your running backs in general, everybody's job is up for grab, coaches and players included. Guys, quite frankly, this is just as bad as how you were defensively in 23. This is the equivalent from it offensively. Let's call it like it is. And it sucks. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. It sucks that it looks like Garrett Nussmeier is hurt. It sucks. And I don't blame him for being hurt. I'm mad at the whole situation that he's hurt. I really am. But you got to have the honest conversation with yourself. Are you being a detriment to your own team? He doesn't have the offensive line around him. He doesn't have a run game around him. And quite frankly, I don't think he's got the play calling around him. What else are you going to do here? Because you can't lay down. The season's not over with. It's not over with. So whatever decision that you are going to make moving forward from today has got to start being some of the right ones. Brian Kelly, in my opinion, has got to be more involved in the play calling, or Alex Atkins, or whoever, but somebody's got to help being involved with it. There's got to be a constant conversation with all of your quarterbacks about what you do and do not do when you're throwing the football. Clearly. Because, guys, it can't continue to happen. The throw and interception versus Ole Miss is not the worst interception of the season. It's not the one against Louisiana Tech. The one at Florida confirms to me of how bad decision-making has gotten, how lackadaisical and unfocused we've been, how la-di-da we've been with the football. You can't run it. You can't throw it. And quite frankly, I don't know where you go from here, but you got to find something. All right.